have Stephen Farrell with the South Carolina DMV, and we have Todd Phillips with SCADA, the South Carolina Auto Dealer Association, and Tyler Rowe with the Fairway AI program that we have been utilizing in a lot of our agencies. And as any of you that may have attended a prior webinar may have seen a demo with Tyler's product. We're going to do a quick overview today, and anyone that wants a further demo, I do encourage you to put your information, reach out to Tyler. He is so happy to have a one-on-one and discuss with you what this product can do to help. But we want to focus on what Tyler did in South Carolina with Todd and Steve. And what we'll do is go through some presentations. Hi, Teresa. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. And we're going to go through and do some presentations and an overview from each of our panelists today to give us some updates and some changes that are happening in this jurisdiction. So, Steve, I want to go ahead and pass it over to you, and you can get started with an introduction and share with the group what you bring to the table. We really appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for your support here of NIVTA and our members.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Beth. Appreciate you allowing me to be here and allow me to talk about what South Carolina is doing from a modernization, innovation standpoint. One of the things I pride myself in is looking for ways to modernize, but modernize with a sense to create an innovation and create efficiency in the way business is being done here. In my arena being vehicles, that includes the titling, registration, dealer operations. So, in partnership with the South Carolina Dealer Services platform, we were able to leverage a QA quality assurance entity that has significantly reduced the amount of titling errors done at the sale of a vehicle through dealers with our EVR program. And then Todd's partnership with Fairway further, reducing the amount of lift that his team has had to do while they're able to utilize, an AI platform to effectively pre-screen applications for titling and registering from dealers. As I said, innovation is something that I'm always looking forward to. One of the other things that we struggle with here in South Carolina is forms. There has been a lack of forms or misuse of forms that has been ongoing in our jurisdiction for quite a while. And in cooperation with the South Carolina Auto Dealer Association and the Carolina Independent Dealer Association, we recognize some shortfalls. One was a dealer reassignment document. South Carolina had not previously had any sort of mechanism in which a dealer outside of the two spaces on the back of a South Carolina title could do a reassignment between another dealer. Well, in the absence of a document, dealers found a way to make that happen, and they were utilizing other forms that weren't initially designed for that purpose to execute a reassignment. So in collaboration with the two dealer associations, we created a DRA 001, dealer reassignment document that allows a dealer operating within South Carolina to reassign a vehicle between other dealerships and auctions within South Carolina. And then re-emphasizing the correct usage of other forms, the affidavit notice of vehicle sold, the secured power of attorney, secured bill of sale, to get those documents to actually be utilized in the scope in which they were originally designed. But we will continue to look forward to innovating. We're currently undergoing a complete system modernization. We've contracted with Fast LLC to provide us a vehicle and a driver solution. Driver solution is currently ongoing implementation and upgrading now. The vehicle side will begin in May of 27 and culminate in August of 28. So I'm sorry, August of 27, culminate in May of 28. We will be fully live with a fast built system that we will call Atlas that will bring us into the 20th century because we've been operating with, it seems like an abacus for the longest time. So with that, that's my spiel for now, and I will be happy to further discuss questions during the Q&A period. And I will turn it over to Todd, who will then kind of bridge the gap between me and Tyler.
Well, thank you, Steve. And just to reiterate, I do very much appreciate the partnership with Steve. He is very forward thinking and really wants to enhance and gain efficiency in the process for not just dealers but every citizen in South Carolina, and it's a huge benefit to have a partner in that. So, one of the reasons we started engaging on this, to Steve's comments, there was a high number of title errors that existed in the state of South Carolina due to the way the process was. Everything gets submitted in EVR, but then dealers may or may not have made errors in EVR that didn't match the paperwork. And then, some of y'all out there in other states who were getting our vehicles from auction would say, hey, I didn't know Ford Explorer was a four-door car. But they were. So we finally started working to create this QA entity so that every single transaction coming from a dealer goes through a quality assurance check prior to it getting to the DMV with a final transaction. I think everybody knows all of our DMVs, RMVs, MBAs are all underfunded. They don't have enough staff to do the work they're required to do. So this gave an opportunity for a public-private partnership to really come in and provide that service, which we've seen, I think, and I think Steve will agree, tremendous benefit in the number of title errors, Navitas holds, suspensions that were happening all throughout the state. So it has allowed for faster processing. The one thing about all of we humans is we still make mistakes. So even though we had very talented title clerks on our team, we were still just making mistakes and looking for ways to improve our quality assurance checks to make sure we weren't making mistakes, which would just, it doesn't help anybody. So we were actually introduced to Fairway by Steve, and were able to sit down and run some tests to see how their product would work with our process. And because we had built out our own platform, all these things. But in testing with Fairway, all of a sudden we were seeing a 60% increase in speed in terms of getting transactions reviewed faster. A very, we would consider very significant increase in accuracy. So where, our title error rate when we first started the program was in the almost 30 and 40% range. We had knocked it down to the 20 range. And with Fairway, we're getting down into the 12% range. And I think a lot of that 20% still had to do with our team making just human oversight errors. So, it really has benefited across the board in terms of speed, accuracy, getting these deals turned around for dealers quicker because of the SLA we have, which is 45 days for a dealer to get things submitted from time of purchase. It has sped up that entire process for us. So, benefits for our dealers. They've actually had to learn how to complete forms correctly, learn what forms to use, and there's been an enforcement, I guess, for lack of a better term, of the DMV rules that Steve had a difficult time enforcing previously just because of the way the system was designed. So it really has improved, I think, everybody's knowledge, and we're starting to see better results.
Thank you, Todd. That's a good insight. It's really amazing to see the difference in the percentage with the error rate. So I'm sure that some folks that are on the webinar this afternoon want to dig into that even more. So we look forward to going through some questions and open discussion. Thank you. Tyler, I think we'll go ahead and pass the torch over to you now.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Beth.
Absolutely.
Good to see everybody Yeah, just a quick overview of Fairway, and then I'll talk about what specifically we've done in South Carolina. So, Fairway, we have codified the rules and regulations across all 50 states for pretty much every DMV transaction. Um, you can see this show up as an agentic title clerk effectively. So you can think about this on the DMV side or anybody that submits. So on the DMV side, this is the clerk that can take inbound applications, title and registration or otherwise, and has the brain, the 50 state brain that can apply those rules and regulations in a uniform and accurate way on top of these applications. We also extract all data off of, all of these forms. So there's no manual entry. It's just put into a state system. So that's on the kind of DMV state side. On the other side, I'd say anybody that submits to the DMV, whether that's a tag agent, a fleet management company, a dealer, et cetera, you can use our agentic title clerk in a suite of modular products. So we can take effectively a very rough, let's just call it a deal jacket that has some DMV related paperwork, some, that is not related, and distill that into what's needed, fill out forms that are missing, and then do one final audit for accuracy and completeness before it's then submitted to the DMV. I'd say where we're at with SCDS and SC DMV is kind of a hybrid in the middle. It's one modular implementation of what we call Fairway audit. So that is injected between submitters via API integration with all the EVR companies in the state of South Carolina and the DMV. So EVR companies or dealers sell vehicles, it's submitted via EVR, it hits our platform. I would say approximately 50% of those are greenlit and no humans have to review them. They are, with a high level of accuracy and certainty, fully complete, doesn't lack anything. It doesn't need to be reviewed by a human. It can then pass to the DMV. The other 50% is then reviewed by Todd's capable human team to really look at some of the more nuanced data and review that just to make sure that everything is correct. I'll share my screen briefly to show what this looks like. So this is the queue for the auditing team in the state of South Carolina. So you can see I mentioned 50%. This is pretty representative. Various different green lights completed. All of the data that's coming in from the EVR, all of the documents, everything has been reviewed, and it looks good. It's fully compliant. Digging in, it looks like this. So we've grouped all of the different sections of this. We've looked at what kind of transaction is this and instantly classified this and confirmed everything, right? Mileage, empty weight, et cetera. Odometer disclosure is here. It verified that the vehicle is a 2004 model, so it's exempt from the mandatory auditor odometer disclosure, et cetera. And everything is here. So this is an example where no one would review this transaction, or you get review. And I'll just show one example. So this is calling out the VIN on this application ending in 7681 here doesn't match the VIN on this North Carolina title. Those Tar Heels, Todd. So you can see here, this is for just a different vehicle, right? So the VIN ending in 7539, it's a miss submit here. And then the last thing I'll highlight is just kind of the global view that you get in the platform, which shows the transaction mix, volumes, it shows auto approval rates, and then rejections by type. So you can see application form, PTO, title, bill of sale, et cetera. The number of transactions. There's even more granular data that I won't show on this, but you can see by processor. So by processor at SCDS, stats on their work. You can see stats by dealer. So it really arms, I'd say, Todd, the DMV, everybody to make informed decision and really drive compliance in the state of South Carolina.
I'd just like to clarify, you notice the North Carolina titles are red. That means an NC State grad designed them, and that's why they have problems.
Fair.
Oh man, our state competitiveness. Well, thank you all very much for your presentation. As a moderator today, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to our group, of course, first for any questions that they may want to come off camera, off mute and ask, or just off mute is fine as well. I'm also going to monitor the chat box, but if you guys don't give a question right off the bat, I have a whole list that we're ready to rock with.
I have a question. This is Mark Bender with Copart. Are you guys, Stephen, you mentioned you're integrating with FAST here next year. Are you looking at integrating as well with like dealers, having a link in for the applications with the new system, or is that something completely different?
Unmute and then you can actually hear me. Yes and yes. It is unique and not part of the original scope of the contract. But one of the initiatives I'm looking at further down the road is how to further integrate DMS solution sets into EVR, into our system to better facilitate the electronic transaction portion. Because as we are looking at bringing on board e-titling, my goal and my purpose in life is to reduce paperwork as much as possible. I love trees. Let's save trees.
I was about to say saving trees.
Yeah, no. But no, just from an efficiency standpoint, if I can make it easier for a dealership to process a transaction that they have already produced in their DMS solution set, and populate information to the DMV without having to submit a paper version of it to EVR, their EVR service provider, to Todd via a linking or adaptation into Fairway, then back to the EVR service provider to us, and have that paper go all the way around that way. If it can just be a digital stream, that makes it so much easier. Because all of our forms should be able to be digitized. So to me, that's a linkage into the DMS solution set, because that's what the dealer is using to produce those documents and produce that information. This is from what I understand. So from that aspect, that's the link, but it's not necessarily a fast link, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Yep. So, I mean, the linkage would probably more straight to the EVR service provider, and then it's the EVR service provider passing us the data, but not necessarily a direct link from DMS solution into Atlas.
Thank you, Steve. And I think that Mark must have known some of our questions that we had prepared, because that was one of our questions today, is what you think about the modernization of title and registration workflows. I think that there's a lot of change, being in this industry for a long time, and when it was all on paper to where we're at now, it's not been that long. And I think that there's been a lot of progress made. And, I'm curious, as Mark brings up that question, Steve, when you make those types of changes for a dealer to integrate further in a digital format, are there any standards or any requirements that you have for them? Because I know across the country, we have a lot of jurisdictions set up where there's contracts involved, bonds involved. And I'm just curious, on that front, as you start to open up more access, are there any things that you need these companies to check the box with for validation?
Yes. We're going to make sure that we're compliant with the NHTSA dollar disclosure requirements for both electronic and digital signature. I know Todd with eStart is well vested in making sure that as we expand the electronic format for all titling work, that it's in with the standards that the federal government as well as state and local governments have established. For South Carolina, we already have authorization for the digital and electronic signature acceptance for forms and documents. We've already begun making a lot of transition to the acceptance of that. The The limitation has been on our system. We have not been able to physically capture the requirements of a digital signature and the audit trail associated within our system to allow the acceptance of that on an odometer disclosure. That's been the limiting factor. That will be embedded in Atlas to where we will be able to capture the full audit trail of a digital signature on an odometer disclosure to open the aperture for that. We will work with the service providers because that's our link to dealers, since we don't have a direct dealer to DMV link, to build and codify those standards and get the message out. And it just like anything else in the world, there will be an electronic group, and then there will be I've done it this way, and darn it, you made me switch from a horse to a car. I'm not switching this fandangled electronic stuff. It's going to be paper. We as an agency and as an organization have to still accommodate that, and we will. But we're going to make the transition to fully electronic as quickly and as seamlessly as possible, because as I'm sure everybody has heard, South Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the union. The problem is the population that's moving to South Carolina isn't of working desire. There are a lot of retirees. So as more people come in, the demand on our ability to provide those services is going to have to shift to a more electronic, more AI-driven capacity to allow us to still service everybody. But as the comment in here, yeah, I've still got to make the 81-year-old mother feel comfortable with a paper title and be able to produce it.
Right.
I have to.
Yeah, because she'll call you, Steve. So wanting her title. So
yeah, no, I mean it's what it is. It's
Yeah.
the same issue we've got with mobile DL. For those of you who don't know, mobile DL adoption rate is around 4 to 6% in a jurisdiction when they bring it on. I think right now California is the highest, and I think they're around 8 to 10% adoption rate, and they've been doing this for years. So it's going to take time, and even in South Carolina, when we decide to bring on mobile driver's license and electronic titles and electronic registrations and other advancements in titling registration, the requirement for us to still produce and allow customers to have a tactile title or registration is still going to be there. But ultimately, over time, as my older generation weeds out and the younger generation has accepted mobile driver's license, mobile DLs, mobile registrations, mobile everything, and everything's on a phone or the embedded chip in the back of the head when that finally comes about, we'll eventually get away from a title, but that won't be in my lifetime. So yes, I will continue to have to make accommodations for the way we currently do business, but I'm not going to let it impede my desire to want to advance the way we can provide our services to the citizens of South Carolina, both businesses and individual citizens. So long answer,
Thank you.
sorry, but yeah.
No, we really appreciate you sharing that with us, because many of looking at the attendee list, there's a number of different folks on here in different parts of this industry that play a role, and it's one of those times where we have to really think about how it affects all the different parts and how we can bring that together to operate in a better and more rapid fashion. I want to turn it over to Todd for a second. Todd, I just have I'm curious to get a pulse on how the dealers are. I've worked along with a lot of the dealer associations. I grew up in a dealership, so I know the ins and outs, ran the parts counter. So went through that as a family owned and operated dealership. But how is your community reacting to these changes, and what are you doing to support them further as this occurs?
Well, great question. And it has been a very mixed bag. We have dealers who are constantly looking for efficiency and trying to shrink the time, who have really embraced it. And we have dealers who, I've been doing it this way 32 years. I don't know why I got to change now,
Yeah.
they didn't even own a computer, much less a scanner or anything else. So there's been challenges, without a doubt. And our first phase, we went mandatory EVR in 2018, I believe it was, Steve, right after you came on board. And that was kind of the first phase. Now this is the second phase with actually scanning and uploading documents. And then, as we move into e-title, hopefully that'll be even more expedient. But, I mean, we have, there's a difference, right? And this is typically a franchise store is mandated to have processes by the manufacturers that more independent stores do not have to have, right? And so that allows for maybe a little bit easier adoption, because you're not a small business owner who is vested, and has to spend, a significant portion of their money to do these types of things. So we get it. But at the end of the day, I think both associations, the Independent Association and us, feel like, these are good advancements. This helps with titling. It helps with fraud. And we see dealers every day across the country get taken advantage of from fraud. And if we can put more and more of these things in place, it's going to limit the availability for these criminals to be able to drive off with a vehicle off the lot, and a dealer be out of a significant amount of money. So in the long run, it's a cost savings, and they've adjusted, but some takes longer than others.
Completely understand. I think that we have that in every pocket of this country. I think that's a struggle every dealer association does have. With that, Todd, I'm curious, how the other, what advice, what are you sharing with other dealer associations that you're working with? Because I know you guys are a close-knit community and check in often.
Yes, this is true. I think all of us, the conversation about electronic titling, electronic processing in general, whatever form that takes in each state, is advancing rapidly. And Beth, with eStart, we're doing a lot of things to try to broaden that conversation. And there's a lot of people who know enough to be dangerous, but may not have a full grasp on what is going on out there. So a lot of it's just education at this point in time of what the possibilities are. We have different vendors in the marketplace who can do different things, and they have different mindsets on how they want to do things, what works best in each jurisdiction, and then where are opportunities for the public and private partnerships? Because as we talked about earlier, the DMVs are, most of them are funded. They are not revenue generating entities. Well, they generate revenue, but in our state, it all goes to the Department of Transportation for our roads. So, poor Steve has limited bandwidth to be able to expand services unless he gets funding from the General Assembly. So, how can we find ways to make those things work within the limited resources that they have? And sometimes it makes sense to have those partnerships. And so we talk a lot about that and what the opportunities are out there.
That's great. Todd, you sound very connected in what you're doing, and I just really appreciate the hard work that you've done, because I know we've shared and we've spoken many times about your staff, the adjustments that they went through. And I know just even in my own agency utilizing Fairway, what night and day difference it has done. And, I know that with my staff and new staff that I'm onboarding, it's really helped with training and the ability for them to also feel a little more confident in what they're doing. Have you noticed a big change in just the morale there with the processors and how things are going along utilizing Fairway?
Oh, most definitely. Our old system, we built it ourselves. And it was good. But it didn't have the speed, the processing time took longer. The great thing with Fairway is it does a lot of the work for them, right? So they go into a transaction and it already shows the potential issues with the vehicle, with that transaction. So now they're validating a lot of it. Sometimes the handwriting is just it's just so atrocious. And that's just a thing. So,
Mhm.
we got to go in and double check and make sure. But it was an adjustment for people to, you know, read what the computer says is wrong with it and go in and validate that and make sure it's right. But they've adjusted well. And like I said, they basically, we were doing about 137 transactions per person per day, I believe is what we were averaging. And now between what the auditor auto approves and what our folks do on their own, a lot of our auditors are bumping up on 400 a day. They're doing anywhere between 225 and 280 themselves, and then the system's doing the rest of them. So it's been a tremendous benefit across the
That's
board.
That's impressive, Todd. And with that shared, and maybe Steve, this is something you could answer too. But with that, a lot of what we, on the outside perspective, we all focus on time. Um, is there a way that you can give me a pulse on, we used to take this long to process, and now we're on this average? I think that that's a lot of the question out of the communities for each state we interact with.
Well, I can't give you specifics. I don't have that in front of me, but I can
That's okay.
generalize it. And from the three different phases, the initial phase we were in, which was pre-QA, what would occur is a dealer would go in and complete a transaction through EVR. It would be in our system in a suspended status until they mailed in the paperwork to us. Then we would review 10% of the paperwork and then clear the ones that if there was nothing wrong with it, we'd clear everything that was in that packet. So in that aspect, a dealer could wait 2-3 weeks before they set something in after they finished the transaction. It would still take about 5 days for it to get to us. It would take about 4 days for it to get from a mailroom to us, and then it'd get put in a queue and we would begin processing it. So you're looking at, a good 15 to 20 days after a transaction was completed in an EVR, best case scenario. Now, because of the way the system's set up, it's already getting reviewed pretty much shortly after the transaction is getting completed and uploaded. Dealers can get feedback immediately on what issues they had. Prior to the QA, we would have to correct the issues post approval, because the dealers at that point in time had already entered on all the information into our system. Phase two, which was pre-Fairway, Todd's group would validate those transactions, and if they said it was good to go, then it was transmitted into our system. But as Todd mentioned, they were only able to do about 100 and some a day per person that they had, and there were still issues with what they were rejecting versus what they were accepting. Introduce phase three, Fairway comes on board. You're doubling the number of transactions that are processed daily, and you're reducing the errors that Todd was seeing by 20%. That's win-win-win across the board on time, accuracy, and trust in the system. Because when we initially rolled it out, there were a lot of issues with, are we doing things the right way? Should we even begin down this path? Because of some of the nuances associated with the approval process in phase one. I think with the speed that Fairway has allowed Todd's group to be able to process these and approve them has gained a sense of trust with the dealers, as well as the accuracy in which they're able to do it. I'm no longer getting the angry phone calls from dealers of the QA entity rejected this, and they shouldn't have been rejected, and then I still get a couple, but it's significantly less. I used to get a good 15 to 20 a day. Now I'm getting maybe one every other week, and those are really niche rejections, and more often than not, the dealer was wrong, where before it was SCDS that was incorrect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the truth, and
Yeah.
yeah. But what Tyler and Fairway's been able to do across the board is make us all better, because even my folks now are able to go into Todd's system and see that approval process a little bit easier, and we can kind of get a better idea of what was approved and why. So from our auditing of what Todd's doing, it's even improved that, even though we're not directly using Fairway. So.
Thank you, Steve. And I think, it's important too for the community to consider and can keep in mind, the mail time, the processing times, and all of that also takes place.
Mhm.
So I definitely agree with you. I think it makes a night and day difference. And, I think that's what we're hearing across the whole board here with this product and what it's done to help speed things up. And the biggest thing, keep things accurate. So Tyler, I'm going to go ahead and start to bring you in this conversation, but I want to pause and just see if there's anyone in the audience that has any questions. Just a reminder, you can always put it in the chat. We can all see that as well. Comment on that or respond to you. I see we've had some reactions. I saw some celebratory reactions there, Steve, to the changes that you're making in the processing times.
Well, that was Todd's crew for the shout out I gave him.
Yeah, that's one of my managers getting excited for the accolades. Yes.
There you go, Sharon. All right. I see you there now. So, Tyler, let me go ahead and roll it over to you and just ask a couple of follow-up questions in regards to South Carolina. Why did you feel that this was, when you started working with this state, why did you think that this was the right place to deploy this? And, maybe you can share a little bit about that. And I'm sure we'll probably carry on to another question or two with you.
Yeah, no, I think there are a couple things. I think one, the kind of private public partnership made this go really fast. Government, no offense, Steve, can take a little bit more time. So it gave us the opportunity to really quickly just prove this. I think we met at a conference, we ran a proof of concept in a number of weeks and quickly proved, this is more accurate, faster, and then did parallel testing. So before this was rolled out to the team, able to do many, many transactions, hundreds or thousands of transactions in parallel to just confirm that, what is your team saying? What is Fairway saying? And are they converging? And we saw that. And then in a number of months, 2 months, were rolled out. I'd say we see the same value, the same use case on the DMV side, and it just takes longer. But we're also making that progress with several jurisdictions and are now at that point where we've had these proof of concepts and have been able to prove that same thing, right? 4x more errors found, 10x the speed for DMVs across the US.
Perfect. And Tyler, I know when we go through reviews as agents and anyone touching vehicle titles, the next thing outside of looking for accuracy is some fraud items. And I know that that's something that we have had lots of discussions about. We've discussed some of the specific occurrences that are happening with driver's license being presented or with the vehicle titles or even registration cards. Is there anything that you're working to integrate? I think you had some announcements recently, and I just wanted to give an opportunity for you to share that because I think it's very important for a lot of pockets of the country that haven't necessarily known about these tools or have had access, just to share some of what you've done to expand on that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we did recently, I think it was 2 weeks ago, launch our Navitas integration. So now it's one audit process for everything. So all of the information comes in, EVR, title, et cetera. We're checking against the true source of truth, and can quickly, people were once typing stuff in, looking at a screen, checking. Now it only gets flagged if there's something wrong, but it is consistent, and that every time that somebody is processing a transaction, it's not optional, right? There isn't another process; it just gets done. So that's one. I'd say we also have our cross document checker. I think we're looking for sources of fraud just by looking at different documents, right? Different cues or evidence that may indicate that something is wrong in that transaction. And then I'd say we're doing more and more on, looking for alterations, strike-throughs, stuff like that are indications. I think there's another level that we aspire to do and is on the roadmap, which is, much deeper kind of, AI analysis of some of this documentation, to look at, much deeper, image forensics, et cetera, to come up with sources of fraud. But I think we're doing a lot now, and it's constantly a game of whack-a-mole because criminals are always on the cutting edge of trying to get things through and steal people's money.
Yeah, and just to throw onto that, the system we call it Ava instead of Fairway. So if I say that, you know what I'm talking about. But it has identified fraudulent credentials a couple of times for us. And just going through the checks of what it should be, the issue date, expiration date, birth date, address, etc., and where those things didn't line up, it absolutely called those out. So it is doing a good job of helping us identify those, which, sometimes you take the human element out and you get some improvement. But it's the consistency, I think, that Tyler was talking about more than anything else. It's the consistent review, the same process, same way. So.
Definitely agree, Todd. The consistency I think is what we're all trying to work towards. It's challenging and, there's 50 different sets of rules. There's all these different changes of what we can accept with electronic signatures, what we cannot. So I want to go ahead and I want to switch over for just a little bit of a broader discussion this afternoon as we have, our last 12 minutes here. So what has surprised each of you, or, what has really changed about the new model that's really worked in the practice of doing the vehicle title and registration? Is there anything, as we wrap up today that surprised you or was, I know we've shared a lot, but if there's anything that really came to mind, because one of the things that I specifically have had challenges with in South Carolina are tax receipts. We have a lot of customers that go in to pay their county taxes. Todd's throwing back. And I say that because I know that there's some folks on the call that have shared that with me, that have reached out to me individually. And it's been one of those, sticking points that we have seen a number of rejections or, this is not the correct one. That was one of the things that has, with use of Fairway has helped us to make sure, our agents are looking for the right document that you are looking to accept when it comes in. But I'm just curious if there was anything that was like of high surprise that it caught, or anything that's along with this process or this new model that spoke to you as you work together.
Well, I'll jump on the grenade to start with. I wouldn't say anything surprised me, other than the desire to work as a collaborative effort was extremely well done. It's as a public entity that's having to venture out into the private world to innovate and create relationships. What we were able to build here in South Carolina, and to support what Todd was doing, which is ultimately supporting what we're doing and providing a good product for the citizens. The ease in which it was done, both SCDS and Fairway were, neither were forceful in the thought process. It was extremely collaborative amongst the three of us to find what was the best way to make this work. Which I think is as a business, a private entity trying to make money on a dollar, Todd, same way, I'm a public figure. Dollars don't matter to me because I don't get any. It was nice to know that a bottom line wasn't established as the driving factor. It was a product outcome that got us to where we're at. Here's what we want to see done, and that was the only thing that was ever really considered. At least it was presented to me, which was good because at the end of the day, we got a outstanding product, with, as Tyler mentioned, with a lot of ease and quickness that I would not have otherwise been able to get. So I just, that if it's anything that surprised me, it would be that it seamlessly happened, with very, very, very little friction at all.
That's great, Steve. I think it's always a success when you can have that.
Yeah.
I know that I have worked alongside with a lot of jurisdictions as they've done modernization, and it can be very challenging. And I think that this is one of those that sounds like a smooth success for you. Todd, Tyler, anything you want to share that really came out to you as a big surprise as this came to evolution there in South Carolina?
No, I mean, you know, I, I guess I'm not necessarily a pessimistic person. I wasn't sure, right? I mean, a lot of people in industry talk about, oh, we can do this and we can do that. And the thought that you can put together, I mean, because everybody on the call knows, right? We have PECs and you have JD Power Connect and you have these other binders and books and websites, and they're all kind of different. There's not one single source of truth for every state across the country, and there's nuances. So I had significant doubts, but once we started running the test transactions through Fairway, I was a little shocked. And I mean, that was the biggest thing to me because I guess I've just been doing it long enough and exposure to enough states in my former life that I wasn't sure this was possible yet. So for us to be able to go in and do this, and even things we found after the fact that were tweaked the same day, to be able to provide that better accuracy as we rolled it out. It really was a smooth process.
That's great to hear. I know anytime that I reach out to Tyler, if I notice something or there's a rule change or something we share, by the next day at the latest, it's changed. It's pretty impressive. And I think that's really important for any company that we're working with in our industry, that they can have a quick pulse and make a correction or an update that way. Some of those updates can take a long time, can really lead us into a long path of having to use workarounds or maneuver around the challenges. Steve, anything you want to add there? I didn't know if you came back off mute
Yeah.
or if you.
Well, I did. I guess the thing, I guess the one thing that shocked me is this hadn't been done before. Because unlike Todd, I'm more of an optimist when it comes to these types of innovations. That to me it just made sense. So when me and Tyler met at an AMBA conference and he was talking about his product, to me it was a no-brainer. It was like, yeah, okay, why not? Let's do it. And then to learn that it hadn't been widely adopted yet for this application, it struck me as odd. But yeah, that's to me that was it. But I'm more of an optimist than Todd.
We're just pulling back the curtain today and sharing.
Yes.
Tyler, you want to jump in and share what spoke to you, what surprised you through this whole collaboration?
Yeah. I think the only thing I would add would be around just the change management. I think, I'm on the technical side. We own the AI, the solution, the kind of what does the computer say? And like this is a large change for people. And we come in, Todd has a 23 person team doing this. And that's always the thing that stresses me out and that we've spent a lot of time focusing on in these deployments is managing that change and making sure that people are extremely confident in our results, feel comfortable with the system, but also morale stays high. I think, we went through a reduction in force as part of this. And the thing that stresses me is you're left with a bunch of people who are saying like, now I'm stuck with this software and I hate it. And that wasn't the case, right? Like I think it was just extremely well managed. I think the partnership in that was, yeah, very well managed. I think we went through that process and everyone came out the other side actually optimistic and excited about the opportunity to use this. Shout out to Sharon. Yes, they have an amazing
Yes,
group.
Sharon.
Sharon and Wendy helped really, drive with Todd, drive this process. But yeah, I think that was the biggest surprise is just really how smooth the entire change management and the people process was.
That's wonderful. You know, Tyler, I can attest to that myself. The difference that it's made in our office is night and day. I have employees anywhere from in their early 20s into their mid 60s, and across the board, they all just love the fact that this gives them a chance to really get a jump start on their transaction without having to do the second reviews that we typically manually did in the office. Anything we could do to reduce a rejection. So it's always been that kind of, you have to have multiple parties involved. I feel like this has really helped us to, you know, come in as a human using AI in our space and truly being successful. It's that HI and the AI connection as I speak to a lot of people, because, you know, we have a lot of folks that do the desk work and they're all concerned, well, where am I going to be? Things like that. Well, we need that human involvement. Like Steve shared, we still have a lot of time period, even with his modernization, and what we're going to have to do to move the industry along. So it's such a great program to bring to the desk for our agents. And we really appreciate that. And I see we've got, okay, I just wanted to check the chat. Everyone's just chatting. Perfect. Thank you, Steve, for sharing your email. You know, as we wrap up here, I know we have a few minutes left. You know, I think that it sounds like there's a lot of success that's going to take place over the next 12, 24 months with this. And I think it would be great, Steve, Todd, and Tyler, we do more check-in. And I'd love to see and hear, you know, how this moves along there in South Carolina. You know, the additions that Tyler shared about some of the fraud. And I'm really happy to hear that it's checking or catching some of the fraudulent IDs, because that's what we have really been challenged with, is the identification verification. So it's great to hear that, those results. Is there anything last you all would like to share? We have a couple of moments here, and I think everyone's really enjoying our conversation from what I am seeing in the chat and from what we're also having for reactions today. So any last thoughts that you would like to share with the community before we jump out?